CIA operative and host of Black Files Unclassified, Mike Baker. Mike, great to have you with us here. Your reaction to everything that is going on, of course, John Kirby saying very clearly the U.S. had nothing to do with sabotaging that pipeline. But then who did?
Well, Russia is suspect number one, right? And they're doing what they always do. Like, this is a disinformation campaign, right, on their part. I think a lot of people are still going to be surprised to find out that Russia continues to be a member of the Permanent Security Council at the UN, despite what they've done, despite Putin's war in the Ukraine. That is bizarre, but it also points to the ineffectiveness of the UN, right? So, yes, they're going to push for this. Seymour Hersh came out with his blog post, claiming an anonymous source. If he actually had the goods, I think Seymour Hersh wouldn't be that bashful about, replying and saying who the anonymous source is. But I think suspect number one has to be Russia. And look, if they actually are serious and they were crazy enough to target and attack offshore platforms, that's essentially an attack on NATO. I don't believe that Putin is completely off the rails. I don't think he's necessarily a rational actor at this point. I think there's a lot of pressure on him that he's facing. But that, I believe, would be a bridge too far even for Putin to do. And I hope the U.S. and our NATO allies have explained that to him and his thugs in real clear detail.
What should we be doing as a response, the United States?
Well, first of all, we need to be very unequivocal in our explanations to them. A lot of this happens behind the scenes. So Biden goes to Ukraine, he makes this, this appearance. He goes to Poland, he makes a speech. But what really happens, where it's really important, is what's going on that we don't see behind the scenes. And so I'm hoping that dialogue is very clear. The next problem we've got is, where are we taking our support and NATO support when we're talking about the war in Ukraine? And we still have yet, I believe, to have that conversation that says this is, I know that Biden says we're with you as long as it takes. Well, you actually need a more clear strategy than that. Right? And so I think they need to be very, if it means providing F-16s, if it means advancing the ball in terms of the additional gear that we're providing. But remember, there's a lag time there. So that's a problem, too. If we say we're providing F-16s down the road, you've got a real delay in all of this.
Yeah. And, Michael, to Mike's point here, we need a roadmap, but not, I think, just with what's going on in Ukraine and how we're handling that. But then there's also China.
Well, that's
right. And then there's also Iran, and we're hearing more and more about North Korea.
Of course. That's why this is so complex. This is not just about dealing with Russia. One of the ways that Russia gets put in check is by China. Let's be very clear about that. When people were talking about them using nuclear weapons, one of the things I said is that I think China would kind of put them in check and not let them use nuclear weapons against NATO allies and so forth, because that doesn't benefit China. China unfortunately benefits no matter what. If Russia comes in and they win and take over Ukraine, they win. But if they don't and it's a complete failure and there's a vacuum, China comes in and destabilizes those countries in the Baltics and so on. So China is in a very strong position here either way, and we have to watch that relationship with Russia, China, and then, of course, Iran, who's been supplying those cheap drones that have been helping the Russians as well.
What's the most danger out of this, Michael? The reason I ask it that way is China wants to get Taiwan. They want to expand their power throughout the world. And like you said, they could go in and destabilize Ukraine and, we can help out there. And suddenly, they're getting China's goal seems to be to become the superpower, not just one of two.
Sure. Now,
Russia is treading water. It's not what it was. Iran has its own domestic problems. North Korea's got a crazy leader. So even though we put them together as kind of an axis, if you will, they all have different goals. And China seems the most threatening.
Right. They all have different goals, but they all act according to their own best interest, right? Their own self-interest. China in particular, right? So Xi will always act in his own best interest, or what he perceives as the regime's best interest. And what is that? First and foremost, it's not losing power. So you set that aside and say, okay, now what is he trying to do? Well, he sees an advantage, and there's always this off-again, on-again relationship with Russia, right? But Russia is clearly, sort of the stepchild in all of this right now. They've shown so many weaknesses, and Putin's not backing off. China looks at this and goes, okay, how do we take advantage of the situation, right? Well, look at this. Look at the energy supplies that they're getting from Russia at significantly reduced prices, right? Look at the market that's opened up because, you know, China, with the sanctions, you know, they're basically selling into Russia now like never before. So there's an advantage here for them. But they will only go so far. And I think you're absolutely right.
Wouldn't you agree they're also watching everything the United States does? So if they were to invade Taiwan, they can anticipate how Biden acts and thinks. You know, that balloon that went up wasn't just gathering physical intelligence of what was beneath it, whether it was our nuclear, whether it was our military bases. They also were surveilling how we reacted and responded to that threat. So that's a big part of this, too. They are watching everything we do with Ukraine and our support of Ukraine. And that's why I say, what are the next steps? After the president of the United States goes to a war zone and embraces that leader, you know, they're in Ukraine. Does that mean we're sending fighter jets? You know, those are the questions that need to be answered, and I think this is what China's watching every second of the day.
It's a really important point, right? Like this is a shrinking globe. It's a much smaller world than we used to live in. Nothing happens in a bubble. So it's very important that you expand the conversation as you're doing to say this is not just Russia and Ukraine, right? And obviously, you know, the noise about China has picked up in recent days because of their visit now. Look, and that's not a coincidence. It's no coincidence that President Biden lands in Ukraine, right? We advised the Russians ahead of time, right? And then suddenly there's an important visit on the part of China to Russia. Right? It's all interconnected.
Do you worry at all when the Biden administration, Mr. Biden himself, says we're not in conflict with China? We're just in competition.
Competition.
It's just not true. And I think the American people even know that. I don't think he's fooling anyone to say that China is not our adversary. Let's be very, very clear. China is our adversary, and they have documented, they have said unequivocally they do intend to be the world power. And they also, the difference between the United States and China is, number one, we act, you know, for 2 and 4 year political cycles, while China looks at 50 years out. They are patient, and the United States is not. And that's their biggest advantage, in my opinion, is their patience and their willingness to wait 20 or 30 years to take over as the world power.
That is true, yeah. We've got a short attention span compared to their long view down the road. Right? And we have to be very pragmatic about how we deal with this. They view, or Xi, I should say, not the Chinese population, but the regime views themselves as at war with the U.S., right? Because they want to end up at the top of the food chain. Right? So that doesn't mean we're lobbing missiles at each other, but in a variety of other ways, that's how they view this relationship.
And I would love to just ask if I could, would you agree they don't even need to lob missiles because they're buying up our food processing plants?
They're stealing our technology.
They're buying up our land where we would farm. They have influence across the board, and they're even, you know,
and they're not subtle about it.
They're getting involved in the politics and influencing our speech. All of this together is warfare.
Yes. All right. Great conversation. Really appreciate having you both here. I wish we could go on, but we're out of time.
Will all this be on the exam?
Yes, it will. All right.
Keep your eyes on your own paper, though.
Exactly. No cheating. Okay. Mike Baker and Michael Grimm, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you, guys.